Few chapters of American history are as controversial and forgotten as the era known as the Banana Wars. Spanning over 3 decades, the US became involved in the politics, economics, and military conflicts of Latin America and the Caribbean, driven by a mixture of imperialism, corporate interests, and military intervention. But what exactly were these wars, and why have they been largely erased from the collective memory of modern Americans? The Banana Wars were not traditional wars in the sense of large-scale battles between nations. Instead, they were a series of military interventions, coups, and occupations that took place across the Caribbean and Latin America between the 1890s and the early 1930s. While many people have never heard of the term Banana Wars, the consequences of these actions are still felt today. But what united these operations was the involvement of American economic interests, particularly the US-based United Fruit Company, later known as Chiquita. United Fruit, with its vast network of banana plantations, played a critical role in shaping the foreign policies of the US government. The company's monopoly on the banana trade in the Caribbean and Latin America, its control over key infrastructure such as railways and ports, and its overwhelming influence in local politics, made it a powerful force in the region. The Banana Wars were not so much about military conquest, as they were about maintaining and expanding the influence of powerful American corporations. To fully understand the Banana Wars, we need to first look at the larger context of American imperialism at the turn of the 20th century. The US had just emerged as a global power after defeating Spain in the Spanish-American War of 1898. With the acquisition of territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, the US began to see itself as an imperial power with interests not only at home, but abroad, particularly in the Caribbean and Latin America. The United States had economic interests in the region, but it also wanted to assert its political and military power. It was during this time that the concept of gunboat diplomacy became prevalent, where the US used military force to protect its economic interests in foreign countries. One of the first major interventions in the Banana Wars was the US military occupation of Nicaragua in 1912. The country was in the midst of a civil war, and the US government sent in 2,000 Marines under the leadership of President William Taft. While the US claimed its presence was to protect American lives and property, the underlying motive was to stabilize the region for American businesses, especially the United Fruit Company. Nicaragua was of particular interest to United Fruit. The company had vast banana plantations along the Pacific coast of the country, and it feared that the ongoing unrest would disrupt its operations. The presence of American Marines allowed the US to assert control over the Nicaraguan government, ensuring that the country would remain in line with American corporate interests. The influence of United Fruit was enormous. It controlled the production, transportation, and exportation of bananas from several countries in the region, including Honduras, Guatemala, and Panama. The company's monopolistic control was so extensive that it even earned the nickname the Octopus because of the way it extended its tendrils into virtually every facet of life in the countries where it operated. In addition to controlling the land and the infrastructure, United Fruit also held immense power over the governments of these countries. Local political leaders were often beholden to the company, and in some cases, US corporations like United Fruit practically controlled entire governments, dictating policies to their favor. In 1916, the US sent troops into the Dominican Republic after years of political instability. The government was on the brink of collapse, and American officials feared that a power vacuum could allow foreign powers, especially European ones, to gain a foothold in the region. US military forces remained in the Dominican Republic for over 8 years, not just for peacekeeping but to secure American economic interests, particularly those in sugar, tobacco, and bananas. While the US military presence was framed as a peacekeeping mission, it was ultimately about asserting control over the country's resources and preserving American profits. Similarly, Haiti became a focal point of US intervention in the early 20th century. In 1915, following the assassination of the Haitian president, the US Marines landed in Port-au-Prince, ostensibly to restore order. However, this intervention lasted nearly 2 decades and resulted in the US effectively controlling Haiti's finances, military, and political systems. The American occupation transformed Haiti into an economic satellite for the US-American businesses, including United Fruit, saw the island's cheap labor as an opportunity for massive profit. Meanwhile, the Haitian people were subjected to brutal conditions under American rule. As the US military grew its presence in the Caribbean and Latin America, resistance began to grow. One of the most notable figures in this resistance was Augusto César Sandino, a Nicaraguan revolutionary who led a guerrilla campaign against the US occupation in the 1920s. Sandino's resistance efforts were relentless. Despite being vastly outnumbered, he and his followers engaged in a series of guerrilla raids against American forces. Sandino became a symbol of anti-imperialism in Latin America, inspiring future revolutionary leaders like Fidel Castro and Ernesto Che Guevara. While the US military eventually withdrew from the region, the legacy of the Banana Wars did not end. United Fruit, now known as Chiquita, continues to be a major force in the banana industry, and the corporate interests that once drove US intervention are still evident today. The US remains heavily involved in Latin America's economic and political landscape, although in more covert ways. Though the explicit military interventions may have ceased, the economic exploitation of Latin America continues, often fueled by multinational corporations that control vast resources in the region. The impact of the Banana Wars, of US imperialism and corporate control, has left deep scars that are still felt today in the form of inequality, environmental destruction, and ongoing political instability. The Banana Wars may have faded from the collective memory of most Americans, but for the people of the Caribbean and Latin America, the impact of these interventions remains very much alive. From economic exploitation to political instability, the legacy of the Banana Wars is a complex one. It is a history that continues to influence US relations with its southern neighbours. Thank you for watching this exploration into the Banana Wars. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what other hidden chapters of history you'd like us to explore. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning,